All right, welcome to the Good Rookies podcast. My name is Faheem.
And my name is Nelly J, y'all, and we are Good Rookies.
That's right.
What's going on, everybody? Happy Good Tuesday to you beautiful folks out there. And guys, guess what? It is episode 34.
3-4.
3-4, y'all. So, folks, we are just so excited for this guest that we have on a podcast today. She stays humble, but today we'll have her flex her arms. So,
That's
Faheem,
right.
please introduce who we got.
All right, Nelly J. So we've been blessed today to get social media content extraordinaire, TikTok popular, digital studio producer at CBC Sports. Let's welcome Sarah Jenkins to the podcast today.
Sarah,
Wow.
Sarah,
Oh my goodness.
Sarah.
I need you guys to introduce me before I do anything. You introduced me into rooms. That was so nice. Thank you.
What's going on, Sarah? How are you doing today?
I mean, I'm as good as you can be in a stay-at-home order here in Toronto again.
Right?
I'm good. It's been a crazy few weeks. As soon as it hit April, it hit our new quarter, which means we're ramping up towards the Olympics. So every day is a long one right now, but I'm good. I'm just hanging out. The sun was out today, so I have no complaints.
Right.
Hey, you know what? Having a warm summer is what we need because it's been a cold winter. You know what I'm saying? So
That's right.
I agree.
I'm hoping to get some good weather coming up. So Sarah, something about you that I really love was that you're into sports and into content creation. So
Mhm.
out of curiosity, which love came first? The love for sports or for content creation?
I'd honestly, I think to some degree, it's going to sound cheesy, but they kind of came at the same time in the sense, I mean, like I've been playing hockey since I was, I don't play hockey anymore. I should rephrase that. I started playing hockey when I was 4 years old. My dad was a ref in the OHL. Like it kind of just was like bred into who I was. I was at rinks when I was like a toddler. And I played hockey my entire life, but as soon as I got my hands on my parents' camcorder, like we were back over Christmas time watching home videos, and my parents were showing me like me stealing the camera at 3 years old, like this old camcorder, and like trying to make videos out of it and like talk to the camera and all this stuff. And I would put on these elaborate shows, and every single night I would put on, like, I called them beauty pageants, but they would just be me like at 7 years old, like putting on an elaborate show and forcing my younger sisters to be background dancers. So I think like the idea of like entertainment and sports were always two like huge things in my life. At one point I thought I wanted to be, you know, like Hannah Montana. I wanted to live that double life. I wanted to be a hockey player by day and a singer by night, like when I was growing up. So I think they've kind of always been there. But when it came to like my career, I actually knew I wanted to do content production, but I didn't actually know I wanted to do it in sports until after I got my 7th concussion and wasn't able to play hockey anymore. So it kind of pushed me in the direction when my dad said, well, you can like find a way to work in sports since you can't play it anymore. And that's kind of how I ended up where I am now, I guess.
7
Wow.
concussions?
I'm like 7.
Yeah. It's why I wear glasses now. Most people don't know that. Concussions can knock your vision, kids. So take care of your head.
I remember, was it Eric Lindros? I remember he had a few concussions, but 7? I think
7 was.
Wow.
And that's only 7 documented, meaning like there could always be, because well, once you've had one concussion, like it's easier to get others. Like I think I've had 8 actually, because one was on a camp counselor and I got hit in the head with a ball, but like because I've had so many concussions, it like knocked me a little bit more. So yeah, it's the one downside to that sport 100% is the concussions. And I don't think people knew about them as much when I was growing up playing hockey. Now it's like a lot more strict concussion protocol.
Yeah, the protocol would be way different back then.
Especially
way different.
The protocol just
I remember like
2-3 years.
Back in the day, you played basketball, got a concussion. I remember like you leave the game maybe if your coach lets you, but most time you play later on in the 4th quarter, right? So I think concussions now is taken way more seriously.
But I think even before, it wouldn't even be diagnosed as a concussion. You know,
exactly.
Like, it would just be, you know.
People are like, oh, it's like a headache and whatever. You knock it off. It's like, oh no, I actually like am getting black spots and can't see, but sure, it's just a headache. So yeah, that was what left my. I mean, I was never gonna say I was gonna make it in hockey, but that was what ended that career a little bit shorter than I anticipated.
Wow. Well, you have a very interesting life, and guys, we'll get into more of it and for the culture. But Faheem, let's get zoned in on some hot topics this week.
All right. So you've heard about Aaron Rodgers on Jeopardy. So first of all, you know, rest in peace to Alex Trebek. You know, like what I do like what Jeopardy's doing is finding others celebrities to fit in. I think that's a great move. Aaron Rodgers, he's always been somewhat a personality, so I didn't really understand right away why Aaron Rodgers was doing this, but then I found out reading behind that, you know, he has a love for the show, and this is something that back in mind he's actually aspired to do, and it's a dream of his, right? So thinking, okay, that's cool. So Nelly J, in regards to the final question on Jeopardy, in regards to the field goal.
Hey, I mean, we all wanted to know the answer, but you know, Aaron just said, "Oh yeah, I want to know too." We all want to know. Like,
we all want to know
why, guys? But that's the thing with coaches, right? And being a quarterback, like, you know, Tampa Bay, I think, would have let Tom Brady make that call, but Aaron Rodgers in Green Bay wouldn't. You know what I mean? So it depends on your coach, how much they trust their QB. I think Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady, those guys should be making the calls, to me personally, because I just admire them. But hey. How about you, Sarah? Your thoughts on that?
My first thought when I heard that he was actually hosting Jeopardy was that being on reality TV runs in the family, because his brother was also on The Bachelorette and won The Bachelorette.
Oh, okay. I'm a Bachelorette fan too, girl.
Yeah. So when I saw he was hosting Jeopardy, I was like, you don't talk to your family anymore. And I just assumed you don't want to be part of the spotlight. But okay, like, I guess Jeopardy's his place to be. He's been in headlines a lot recently on and his secret engagement, all that. But I mean, honestly, props to that for the final question. I love those like little viral moments. That's why you get someone like Aaron Rodgers on the show, like from a content perspective, right? You're like, that's what you were looking for. You wanted him to get called out for that. You want that moment that sports fans and Jeopardy fans will be able to react to. But I can't say I can see him being a permanent host, but I mean, like, for the novelty of it, it's cute. It's fine.
Right? One and done for sure.
One and done,
right? Exactly.
So in regards to players who transition to media, I mean, it's cool that Aaron Rodgers is actually a current player and now he's on the big screen, or I guess the small screen. But Sarah, is there any players that you can actually see making that transition, or a good transition from media or from sports to media?
I personally am of the camp that I believe that we haven't even seen the beginning of player power within media. Like, I think it's just the start of it. I was lucky enough to be a producer on Danny Green's podcast, Inside the Green Room, while I was at Yahoo. And that was one of the first, in Canada, it was the first player podcast that was with a current player, which was really cool and a unique experience to work on, because it truly showed just how much better it is. Like, as someone I've done on air, I produce, I could never get the type of answers out of these guys that their teammate can. Like, he's able to poke fun at things, and it's another level. And as much as, yes, I do agree that there is place for people that just want to like talk about sports and give their opinion and whatever, I truly think in the next 10 years, you will see, like, my example I always use is on a panel right now, you'll have 4 people on a panel. 1 will be a former coach, 2 will be or 2 will be just like sports commentators, like people that analysts. Just love sports, analysts, whatever. And then there's only 1 former athlete. You're going to flip that even 5 years from now. 5 years from now, it's going to be at least 3 former players, and then maybe a former coach, or maybe a analyst of some sort that just went to school and use it maybe from like an analytics point, in like deep analytics as an example, like hockey or something. But I don't even think we've scratched the surface on play. Like, more and more players, like, their agencies are now creating like content studios. Where like they will create content for them, and like more players are getting podcasts. Like, Vince Carter has a podcast, like he had one while he was playing, right? So like there's all of these people that are dipping their toes into media while they're still playing. So that only tells me that it's going to be like a tsunami of players that want to get into media. Kia Nurse, we saw it with her, right? She's already signed a deal with TSN and she's a current player. So I think it's only the beginning, and it excites me because my favorite content I've produced has always been when the player is like steering the wheel of it. And I think I'm excited to see like what happens next, because I think player power in the media landscape is very much needed. And then you're not going to get that whole like old media asking bad questions mentality, because like they were in that position. Like, I'll never know what it's like. As much as I study the game, as much as I do whatever, I will never know what it's like to be on the court in like a game 7 on the finals or something, right? But Danny Green does. So it's like, as much preparation as I can do, I can never match what they do. So I'm excited actually to see how much more we see. Maybe not hosting Jeopardy, but in the sports space specifically.
Yeah, no, you're right. Like, I think it's really interesting because even with is it Uninterrupted or
right?
You know, like, I like that because I do think And we'll get into it with ESPN and other sports networks, but I do feel that sometimes there's a lot of like bias, and numbers, like you said, can't tell you the full story, right? Numbers can only tell you a quarter or even 10% of the story, whereas that experience being there, right? That anxiety, that pressure, that attention, you know, certain things you can't mimic, you know what I'm saying? And I think players have had a lot of lack of respect by the media, and I am happy that, you know, there's a movement like uninterrupted, and we'll see more, like you said, in the future of players speaking up for yourself. But then there's players who bash other players worse than the media.
Yeah,
so I mean,
that's true. It's a fine line, but I think there are these people, like these people aren't, like, I think the biggest like mistake that the media made for years and years is that these guys are just like dumb jocks, right? It was that like idea of that, when really, like, how many players need like go to like these crazy high level schools in the States? Like, they're educated people. Like, these people aren't dumb. So like they understand, and now more than ever they grow, like, you're seeing like younger players that grow up with social media and content, so they understand. So like they're media trained from the time that they're like I don't know, 14 years old. So like they understand how the media functions and how they can better have it serve them. And I totally agree. There will be players that call it other players. There's always going to be that little bit of bias, especially if it's someone that you like maybe like played on the ice or on the court against that you didn't get along with best. But I do just think that you're never going to be able to understand what they do. And I think that's where the beauty in it. And I think we're going to see more things like Uninterrupted pop up, or just something like Uninterrupted becoming bigger.
Yeah.
So speaking to what you were mentioning, Sarah, is I'm just wondering in regards to the pace, because you're talking about the current players now. I feel that in basketball, there's a lot more social engagement with the players in comparison to, say, for instance, hockey.
Yeah.
You know, the hockey players, I'm not getting that vibe. Like, now, mind you do have players like Kevin Weeks. He's a friend of the podcast. He's been on here, you know, ex-NHL goalie, and now he's on the NHL Network. You know what I'm saying? There's like, there's a ton of retired players, but in regards to current active players, I almost feel like basketball players, the culture of basketball allows it to be more social, while 100%. In hockey, it feels like during the season, you're just focused and you're just doing hockey. There's nothing else. And even outside of the season, I'm not really getting that vibe like they're getting any traction in regards to social media.
Yeah, I think hockey has a lot of catching up to do on like a lot of fronts. Like before we even get into social, there's like so many, like you want to talk about the sport that's like so far behind. I mean, like we saw it this summer, right? Like they were so far behind on everything. Like you have to beat it over their head for them. So like, it's like I have to hit you with my truck for you to understand like how far behind you are. It's like insane. So that's actually was the most frustrating part when covering the sport, is just that like it's that culture, and everyone's comfortable, and I get it, like people don't like change, but I mean, look at what we're in the world right now. That now is the time more than ever that you could change that culture. You could change the way that your organizations are run. One thing I find, especially with hockey, is that the PR organizations are super tight knit. Like they're super tight in who they allow to talk, when they allow them to talk. I think hockey players grow up not realizing that that's an option for them. Basketball, it's just so different. Like, I mean, I'm not saying that happened overnight in basketball, but even down to like the fact, like, look at like league fits as an example. Like basketball, like they're celebrated for the way that they like come in, and like when they come in with a great outfit or something. And like when we saw Serge with the scarf and like all of this stuff, right? Like that's stuff that's celebrated in basketball. But in hockey, like they just wear their regular suits. One time, Willie Nylander wears a Sugo hat and everyone rips him apart for it. Like the younger fans thought it was cool, but like some people just don't get it. Like my uncle that lives in Saskatchewan that's a fan of the Leafs doesn't understand that. Like he doesn't get it. He doesn't get why he's wearing a Reebok windbreaker. So they're just hockey itself is so far behind, and it's a lot of because of the accessibility of the sport, and just I have a lot of opinions on hockey at its grassroots level being like a big issue with its like misogyny, all these other things, which is a whole other thing that we could talk about one day.
It's a whole other topic,
that,
girl.
100%, and like that at its when that's your core of how your sport grows, like it's almost like it's got a bad root, right? I guess is the best way to put it. With a plant, like it just has a dead root, and so it's not going to grow that big. Whereas other sports are investing in their players, are investing in opportunities for their players with media and everything, and hockey's just behind on so many levels. And I don't think that's going to change until a lot of the leadership changes in the sport, but that's not going to change anytime soon either. So I think it's going to be a while before we see that change in hockey. But also it's just these boring white guys from like Southern Ontario. Like some of them just don't have personalities. Like I'm sorry, I went to high school with all those people. Like it's true. So I think at its grassroots level, hockey it's not as diverse, it's not as inclusive. And like what does well when you're making social content, stuff that's diverse, that's inclusive, and that's relatable. And so none of these things that like these guys that play AAA and have like private coaches at 13 are not relatable. So I think it's going to take a while before there's a shift. And that's why I love basketball now. I never used to cover basketball. I didn't care about basketball until I started working on Danny's podcast. And I was like, oh, you guys are cool. Like, I want to hang out with this crew. Like, I don't want to hang out at the guys that just like wear their boring suits. You know what I mean? Like, it really changed. Like when I saw the culture was different. So I haven't seen it yet. I think women's hockey is doing a good job at trying to be different and show their personalities and whatever, but they just don't have a league really to play in right now. So I think we'll see a shift eventually, but so hockey's got to solve its grassroots problems before we actually see any of them having like cool podcasts and shows and like, you know what I mean? Like it's going to be a while.
No,
well, you know what? Like I want to shout out Soul on Ice podcast because that's by Kwame Damon Mason. And those guys are, you know, it's like two NHL players, one
awesome.
analysts, and they talk about hockey, and they have people of color that are women playing hockey, and it's a really good podcast. So they're kind of like one of the trailblazers right now in hockey, trying to make it, like you said, cool, right?
Which we need more of. It's like it's just not cool. It's not cool. And I'll be the first to admit it. I worked for 2 years at a company where my job was to try and make hockey cool, and I tried my best, but you can only do so much when the sport itself is not allowing you to try and make it cool, I guess.
Right. No.
I'm clearly very heated about hockey as a non-sport.
It's okay, girl. Hey, it's all good.
So in regards to the Olympics, we know that even with the Summer Olympics now, in regards to Tokyo, things are kind of up in the air due to COVID right now. It's kind of had everything shut down. One thing that's just kind of popped up recently was in regards to the Winter Olympics for 2022, which is supposed to be in Beijing, China, and the U.S. Talking about a potential boycott of the Beijing Olympics. Hot topic.
Hot topic. I mean, it's funny because, you know, there was a boycott in the back of the day. I think it was Soviet Union boycotted the Olympics before. So this isn't the first time you've seen boycotts in the Olympics. It's something that has been done. I think because I think they invaded Afghanistan and the US. So there was a big issues back. So US had done it before. And I think, I mean, what China is doing, I mean, China's not, you know, China, they're like, yo, we ain't doing nothing. We innocent, right? We have no COVID cases. Like they're just innocent, right? But I think the problem is that, you know, what we're seeing from other media outlets and what China is saying are two different things. And I would say, like, I feel bad because, you know, we have, like, Canada does so well in the Olympics for Winter Olympics. Like our skiers, our figure skaters, like we rule that, you know what I mean? So it sucks that athletes may miss it, but I don't think Canada's going to boycott or US because it's too late. It's already April? Like, it ain't gonna happen. I think it's too late. How about you, Sarah?
I think
it can happen.
I actually had a discussion with someone today. The issues that have been going on in Beijing have been going on since they like awarded the Olympics back in 2014, 15, right? Because if you're awarding an Olympics for 2022, you're probably doing it like 8 years out, 10 years out. So it's like anywhere between 2012 to 2015. And it's not like those issues haven't still existed. Like we see protests for this type of stuff in Toronto every single day. Like it's like maybe not every day, but every weekend at least, right? So I think the real onus is on the IOC for like not doing a little better at just being money hungry and just going after who can pay the big paycheck. And I guess they already had facilities. I understand that. But I think that's where like the onus should be put on is like the IOC would have known that this was an issue and was going to potentially be an issue. Obviously with COVID, it put more of a magnifying glass on China. I don't know. I think it's going to be really interesting, especially with Tokyo. Like what's going to happen in Tokyo is really going to tell us what's going to happen in Beijing. And I think it's honestly the state of the Olympic movement's kind of in the next year because it's a lot of people are just kind of like over it and like over how like money hungry it is and everything. And I think I wouldn't be surprised actually if countries boycott or if they go, our international organization isn't going, but athletes can go individually. Like if an athlete individually wants to go, then they are able to go or something like that. Like I wouldn't be surprised if that happened. But I don't know, like in a time where it's all about like player power and it's all about athlete power and using their voices, I don't see a world where at least like there's not major protests happening at games in China. And then what happens then? Do you get detained? Like, how does the IOC protect their athletes that way? So they've already come out with Rule 50 and how players are going and athletes are going to be allowed to protest, just not on the podium, and like be ways like to do that. So I don't know. I think Tokyo will really set up, if Tokyo even happens, will really set up what we're going to see in Beijing, because it does feel really close. And if I feel like it's really close because of my job, but also a lot of qualifying events haven't even happened for Beijing. So it wouldn't be unreasonable for countries to start saying, I don't feel comfortable going, I'm going to boycott and pull out.
So say, for instance, the U.S., they're the big one that's mentioned. Coming back to what you were saying earlier, Nelly J, in regards to the U.S. boycotting the Soviet Olympics, I think it was 1980. Canada, so the reason why I'm going to ask this question is it wasn't just the U.S., Canada was involved also. There's other aligned countries that actually joined in with the Soviet Union, right? So in this case, where we're just here in the U.S., Sarah, I'm going to throw this to you. Say, for instance, the U.S. does it, but they also get alliance happening with other countries. Do you think that would get more traction for it to happen?
100%. It takes one domino to fall. Look at Canada. Canada was the first country last year this time to say, we are not going to Japan for the Olympics in the current COVID situation. And they only did that. They only did that because they knew Australia was in their back pocket and was going to announce it. The US was like, they knew that all these countries were going to come with them. They would have never just done that on their own. Like, we're too nice to do that. So they wouldn't have done that on their own. And so, yeah, one domino falls. Like, nobody wants to be the only country not going. North Korea being the only country that's announced that they're not going to Tokyo right now means nothing. Most people are like, North Korea competes in the Olympics? Like, they don't even realize.
Honestly,
but
I was
that's
shocked.
Also, it's going to happen. I've worked 2 Olympics and I didn't even know they competed. Apparently they won a few medals in Pyeongchang. But I think we're going to see the same thing, maybe like not even as far as Beijing, but with Tokyo. I think we're going to see countries that choose not to go for the safety of their country and not wanting to go to a super spreader event that's going to come back and cause a second global pandemic post an event that brings the world together. So I think it's just one domino. It just depends on how big that domino is, right? So if you see like an Australia or someone that decides to pull out of Tokyo too, then I wouldn't be surprised if you saw more countries do it as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like especially with the variants happening, and there's a lot of anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers. Like if you're an athlete at this point, it's like, if you don't believe in vaccines, I mean, you have to get vaccinated. If you don't believe in wearing a mask, you have to wear a mask in the Olympics.
Well, the thing is, they don't legally have to be vaccinated to go to the Olympics.
Like, I did not know that.
So like, this is the issue. They're not making it legal. So it's like, you're 10,000 athletes and 10,000 people work, and that's even without like, that's just bringing it down. You're going to tell me this on a super spreader event? All it takes is one person. Like the Vancouver Canucks are an example. 25 of them have the variant.
Right.
Like
that's insane.
Yeah, and the worst,
really hard for me to wrap my head around.
Yeah, the worst thing is, especially when you have the Olympics and you have like the Olympic Village, meaning like you're having athletes contained within a radius of a few, like an area. It's that,
and it's not going to be the Olympics that they want, right? Like, it's just every time we talk to athletes, they just know it's not going to be the same. Like they have to leave the Olympic Village within 48 hours of them finishing their event. Like that means they win and they got to get out of there like as soon as possible. Like it's not going to be the same. There's no families, there's no overseas fans. So I don't know. I think we're going to see, this is going to be an interesting time the next month to see like if any countries pull out of both Beijing and Tokyo or just Tokyo, Beijing. But yeah, it's looking rocky for the Olympics.
Yeah, they are tied.
It's sad. And like a question for you, Sarah and Faheem, do you think athletes have been used as pawns in Olympic settings for like political views? Because like, for example, like remember when I think Russia had players that were like, dosing, and like, I just feel there was a comment made by I forgot her name, but she's a president of Canadian Olympic Committee, and she's made a statement that, we don't want to hinder athletes to not compete. But my thing is this, right, is that I think sometimes we forget athletes are human beings. And so if my husband is Muslim, if I have relatives that are Muslim, if I have friends that are Muslim, how can you force me to want to compete in the Olympics in Beijing? You know what I mean? I think 100%. Sometimes we have to understand that these athletes are human beings and they may not want to go because of that one issue, right? So it's just, whereas, you know, back in the day, like Jesse Owens, he ran for America, a country that's still, you know, killing Black people, but he ran because he wanted to make a statement, right? So it's interesting how Olympics can be used to make a statement and to share a message to the world. Or but if you don't go, I get it, because you don't want to go knowing that this country is doing things to people, right, of color. So it's gonna be hard, man. Like, I think Beijing, I'll be shocked, but it can happen, I guess, the boycotting, right?
I don't know about, okay, so in regard to what you say about the ponds, there's a kind of two-part to that. So athletes train, like that's their goal, is to go to the Olympics, win a gold medal, because you have sponsorship, you know, like you put in a lot of work as an athlete, right? So I can't say they're actually pawns, because they are putting in the work, but they're putting the work in hopes to getting a goal at the end, and that's winning and sponsorships and a livelihood, right? So I wouldn't say they're pawns. I don't. So what? If I'm not saying
not pawns, I mean like pawns. I mean, like, right now with the whole Beijing Olympics, I'm asking you, are they being pawned at this moment because of the political issues between China and America and Canada, whatever?
I think that the issue that sometimes we'll forget, and I only know because now I work at CBC where we cover high performance sport all year round, right? Is 99% of the time, these athletes are not training for the Olympics, they're training for themselves, right? So they're training for themselves to go to all these other world championship events or win the Crystal Globes or do this, do that. Like, they only compete for their country once every 4 years. Right. So, like, their country is not the priority. As much as people go, I want to compete for Canada, no, you are your own priority. Like, in order to be that level of an athlete that is going to be competing for a podium, you have to be very selfish in a good way. Like, you have to be selfish and be focused on yourself. So I think that more so the athletes care and think about themselves rather than what the IOC is doing, what the COC is doing, I don't think they really think about it that much. I think they just think of, how is this going to affect me, specifically me? And if I don't feel like I'm going to be comfortable going to a country that doesn't want me there, then, like, I'm not going to go. So I think you'll see more athletes start to back out individually. And then I think the COC would step in, Canada specifically, if enough of their athletes came forward. They have an athletes commission that sits on a board and they work with the COC and they represent the athletes. And I think if they said, we do not feel like us going represents what being a Canadian athlete means, then I think then they would pull out. But I don't think the COC would ever make a decision without the athletes commission, because that wouldn't be fair. And then the athletes would just revolt and then they wouldn't go anyways.
Yeah,
right.
That makes sense.
That's true. So in regards to the athletes, so the IAF, the world championships that they do have, I've never, I don't think, generally people don't really watch like track and field, you know, unless it's the Olympics. People don't tune in for the world.
I watch track and field.
You? Okay.
You watch Diamond League on CBC Sports?
Yeah. No, I love track. Yo, like, I love track and field. Like, all my friends, especially like, you know, like the Jamaican, you know, their track team is always really good to watch. So no, like, I love, like, at all Olympics, I'm gymnastics and track and field. Like, I love those two for Summer Olympics, to be honest.
But you do have a point in the sense of, like, I mean, we do it at CBC every single Saturday. We show high performance sport. We show Mikkel Kingsbury, who's won however, like 8 Crystal Globes in a row or something. Nobody thinks about him until the Olympics happen. Right, it's true. So I think it really does depend. But if Usain Bolt was still racing, I don't know what he's racing in other than the Olympics. Like, that's me working at CBC. I don't know. You can tell, like, you pay me, gun to my head, like, what is he competing in this year? I'd go, I don't know, the 100 meter. Like, I have no idea. So I think it's true though. It's like, that's why I think the athletes care more about themselves, because they're very aware that, like, for the majority of the time in these higher performance sports that aren't like hockey or, I don't know, figure skating, these ones that are like professional players coming to us, like, high performance event, like, I think they just care about themselves. They don't actually care about anything else.
I agree.
Yeah, a good point.
So ESPN, they had the NBA best 25 under 25 list that they just put out this past week. Very interesting. And the reason why this is catching, I guess, some traction here is LaMelo Ball was number 3 on that list. For the most part, a lot of people are up in arms in this. Nelly J?
Yeah, I mean, I get it, right? It's ranking young stars by future potential.
Yeah.
So what we have to understand is that whoever wrote this article, they have clearly a huge, and I don't want to say erection, that's rude, but they have a huge love for the ball, for LaMelo. And I think like stuff like this is really based on who you watch, who you prefer, you know, like what type of player do you like to see. But there's no really any stats behind it, because again, it's like I'm forecasting the future based on what I see today. Now, if you see LaMelo only play half a season and you think he'll be the top 3 player in the NBA, I don't see that happening, to be honest. I feel like Jason Tatum should have been up there. I feel like Donovan Mitchell, Devin Booker, as LeBron said, the most disrespected player in the NBA. Even RJ Barrett, like he's a Canadian boy, and I think he's going to be a top player in the future. And he wasn't even on the list. You know what I'm saying? So another Canadian getting snubbed. So I just don't know, guys. Like, I just feel it's ESPN. Maybe it was a gotcha article. Like, I want y'all to talk about us. Right? Or
and look, we're talking about it.
Hello, right? Or are they actually being serious? I was laughing because Stephen A was like, whoever wrote this article must have been drunk. And I'm like, of course you say that, because so even their own analysts at ESPN are just like, who the F wrote this article? You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. I don't agree with this at all, respectfully.
I will say, looking at, like, my first thing that I was, like, surprised by was that, like, so we have 2 Canadians. Like, we've got Shea on there and we've got Jamal.
Well, that's true, Shea, yeah.
Shea is ahead of Jamal. Like, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander is ahead of Jamal Murray for, like, and even if this is about who's going to be better, like, how can you not look at Jamal Murray's, like, playoff performance last year alone and not put him in the top 5? Like, to be completely honest, like, I that's what's shocking me right now. And I guess because, like, Shea's, like, taken over for, like, Chris Paul and stuff, but, like, him being 3 spots, Jamal's at 13, 3 spots ahead of him, that's, like, a little sus to me, but whatever. I don't get paid to write for ESPN.
So unfortunately, I think I am going against the grain in regards to LaMelo Ball. I've been following him since high school. Yeah, so
it's a bias. And again, that's okay, right? Like, it's a bias based on what you prefer. I get that.
I just want to say, so this is a projection. Now, mind you, what they didn't specify is the projection of how far ahead this projection is. Is it a projection over the next 5 years, over the next 10 years, over the next 3 years? It didn't state, right? It just says for the future. I do happen to think, though, LaMelo Ball, I do think he's special.
First of all, like your eyes are sparkling, folks. If you're not watching us on YouTube, Faheem's eyes sparkled when he said that.
It's like under his sweater, he pulls out a LaMelo Ball jersey. Like, I've been waiting for this one.
It's like, you know, it's like in anime when a character is like blushing, it's like his eyes just went like this with
and
like
the hearts
red.
Go over.
Yes. Sorry. Go ahead, Faheem. Talk about LaMelo Ball. Go ahead.
No, I think he's a special player. It was very unfortunate what happened with his injury, which cut
that sucks.
Short. I think he's on his way to winning Rookie of the Year, and Charlotte. I mean, just him being on this is Charlotte's best. We've never talked about Charlotte anywhere this deep in the season where they are. I think he's a big part of that. I don't think they can maintain it. I do look at the list, and I'm seeing, like, you know, right after him is Donovan Mitchell, Jason Tatum, like you mentioned. Like I said initially, it doesn't say how far ahead we're talking. So if we're talking 5 years, who I think is better, I'm going with LaMelo Ball. I'm sorry. Yeah. I think in 5 years, LaMelo Ball is going to be that guy.
So you think in 5 years he'll be above Tatum and Donovan Mitchell and Devin Booker and Jamal Murray? And okay, that's fine, and that's fair. That's fair. I respectfully disagree. How about you, Sarah?
I was just going to say, his dad will go insane if he's at the top of one of these lists in a couple of years. Honestly, it'll make for the reality TV show to be that much better. But respectfully disagree. In this list, though, they did say that Shea, they think, will be in the top 3 as soon as next year, maybe. So I just want to see a Canadian at top because I produce a Canadian basketball show and I'm biased, and that's good content for me. So
hey, girl, hey, I hear you.
So in regards to Shea and Jamal, so Jamal's in a perfect situation where he's not the number 1 guy. He's playing with Joker, who's like, it's pretty much his team, and he's like the Pippin, the second player, right? Shea's in his position where it's just him. Like it's his team, and he's sparkling. Like he looks great. So, I mean, hopefully, if one of those two will crack. But like you said, RJ has potential, but of the
For
three
the
of them, I think
future,
for the
for the
future, yeah.
future.
So let me ask: 5 years ahead, Canadian content. 5 years ahead, Jamal Murray, Shea, or RJ Barrett. If you had to choose one.
Shea, and I only say that because Javon doesn't shut up about Shea on our show.
Oh, really?
And I mean, he's friends with him, so it also like helps.
Exactly, Javon. Yeah, Javon.
I think so, but also like I just the way he talks about it, the way he talks about shooting. Like to be honest, I don't. I mean, he was a basketball player, and I trust him, and I don't know enough about it, but I just think there's like. You're right. He is the number one guy right now. He's got Lou Dort too, which is like another like. I just think that.
Shout out to Lou Dort.
Yeah.
Shout out.
So I think that him this young having that much responsibility, obviously the injuries have been tough, but I think him being this young and having so much responsibility, I don't think you can like. That's like you don't really get much more experience than that, right? Like as a young guy, like I think if they can go on like a playoff run or something and he can gain that experience that Jamal kind of got last year, I think 5 years from now you're seeing like him as like a conversation of like an all-star starter and like one of the best in the league, which will make my Canadian heart very happy.
I'm surprised that like no one mentioned Trey from the Hawks. Like, do you think he's? Because I mean, like Trey Young, everyone has always bigged him up, and he's like 16. And I was surprised. He's kind of low for me as well, actually, on this list too. So I'm surprised because Faheem, like you love you some Trey Young, so I'm surprised you didn't mention him like at all.
I mean, I rate Trey Young, but where he's at, I mean, it's fair. Like I said, these are just projections, right? He's on the list, so
this to me is I'm telling you, this is ESPN. Let's put an article that just will make everyone talk about us, and it worked. So
that's why they make lists. I mean, every time the year end comes, we talk about how can we make a list or rankings, and people talk about it. So there's nothing people love more than debating over lists that don't mean anything.
Right.
Yep, it's true.
This is kind of Canadian content. OG was not on the list, by the way.
Oh, that's true.
I bet he was on it next year.
How old is
he? 23.
Yeah, he's
22.
Yeah, I would expect to see him on the list when I seen it. I was like, okay, but I mean, but one thing I can say while you're looking that up, Sarah, is
23.
23. Okay.
Cool.
They got it right with Luka, though. I'll say that.
Yeah, number one.
The league,
we can't debate that.
like it's like the baton's been passed. You know, it's like I feel it's going to go LeBron, and it's going right to Luka's hand, and Luka's taking it home.
Right, Express. Yeah, Luka is going to be the future for sure. For sure.
That's right. All right. So Nelly J, let's go to For the Culture.
For the culture, y'all. We like to highlight people, individuals. That's for the culture. And folks, we want to highlight Miss Sarah Jenkins.
That's
Woo!
Right. That's right.
So Sarah, you have your own media company called Sarah Jenkins Media. And what I love about what you're doing is that, you know, you rarely see female or woman producers in Canada creating good quality content for sports. And what I really enjoy is that you have Jack and Soph that you've produced for. You've done Inside the Green Room with Danny Green, a Yahoo Sports Canada podcast, as well as Hot Hockey podcast. So you're well-rounded in sports media. So for sure, clap for you, girl. We gotta clap for you. So just kind of walk us through with Jack and Soph, and I go all your podcasts. What made you want to produce podcasts in the first place? And, you know, are you still doing this? And if so, what podcasts are you actively helping producing today?
So I kind of fell into podcast producing. So I got hired at Yahoo Sports right at the school, right at the university. I was the first woman to join their team, and I was a video producer. So video producer, but that was a very loose term because we were such a small team. We did everything. I made social content, video content, whatever. And we were starting to play around in the podcast space, and Jack and Soph was one of our first real big marquee shows that we did. And it kind of made sense. It was the only female sport hosted hockey podcast in Canada at the time. And I wanted to produce it. I'm a woman who loves hockey. So I got assigned to that show, and I did everything on that show. I had no help. It was literally I would book the guests. We did it Jack was in New York and Soph was in Toronto. So we were doing Zoom like this before it was, well, not on Zoom, on Skype, but like before it was like cool, before it was normal. Like people were like, you want me to join Skype? What is this? Like 2009? Like nobody knew what we were doing. And that was like a challenge. I did all the technical, and then I edited the podcast, and I did all the social media content. I made all of our graphics, ran it all, which was exhausting. It was a lot. But it truly did like show me every aspect of what it goes into to make a full show and to make it successful. And I really dove into analytics and learned all about that end. And then we got Danny Green's podcast, and I was one of the producers on that. So my job mostly on that show was to take the full episode that we would edit, like the YouTube version, because we would film it 3 multicam, and I would cut that down into the best social clips that I thought could like go viral. And we had a couple with like Jeremy Lin that hit 1 million views and like that kind of stuff. So like that was my job to cut down the podcast. And that's where we really saw that podcast content can be video content. They don't need to be exclusive. It doesn't need to be like you're just audio, just video. And now we see it like almost anyone that has a podcast now does video, right? Like you're kind of behind if you're not doing that. It's a way to promote it. So it kind of just went hand in hand with doing video content, because it's like the same type of thing, except for you just take away the video part, right? Because audio is at its core. Your audio, the number one thing I learned in school is if your audio is bad on a video, it doesn't matter how good your video is, like nobody cares about it. So I kind of fell into podcast producing, and I currently don't produce any podcasts. I'm now full-time at CBC Sports, so my freelance Sarah Jenkins media stuff's kind of on the side. I don't really do any freelance right now because I'm full-time at CBC, dedicated to them and building their team. But we do produce a podcast there called POV in Studio that we're starting to bring into our digital studio, which is kind of cool as a way to give them a multi-camera element and bring that up to speed. So yeah, I just think, I mean, I fell into podcast producing, but at its core, it's not any different. Like any type of content producing is the same in my brain, like video, social. Like I never think of myself as just like a one asset producer, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's really cool because like you mentioned, like you're now, what you started off, with your podcasting, what you experienced, you're now working full time and you're building a team to create even better content, right? For, CBC, right? Which is a huge, probably number one, I would say, channel in Canada here. What would you recommend for any woman out there, a young woman, older woman who's looking to push in the media content space in Canada? What would you recommend that they do? What's the don'ts to not do? So like, what's your advice for people like that?
Well, my biggest piece of advice to anyone, and I spoke to a few students the other day at a class, and I always say, like, whether you're in front of the camera or behind the scenes, you are a brand, right? So I'm a behind the scenes person. I'm not front camera facing, but you guys still knew who I was to ask me to come on this podcast as an example, right? So I make sure that you know who I am as Sarah Jenkins, the producer. Like I make sure that's known. And I think that's a really important asset to have. I think it's important to share your content. I don't think it's always just about like, it isn't always just about the host and the person that's like front facing on it. Like what I did a really good job of when I was at Yahoo is if I got a really good clip in a Leaf scrum, I would quote it and tell a behind the scenes story about something that I noticed in the scrum while I was shooting that. Or when Kyle Lowry came in for Danny Green's podcast, it was his birthday, and I decorated the set for his birthday, and Kyle like wore the little birthday boy pin that I bought him, and I totally think he wouldn't do it, but like then when that video went up, I quote tweeted it and told that story. So I always try and find ways, like, because people love when the curtains pull back, people love behind the scenes content, and so I always try and say to like, especially women in this space, especially behind the scenes women in this space that are not in a front facing position, like you are a brand, sell yourself as one. I don't care if you have 3 followers, like promote the hell out of your stuff. Like you made this, shout it from the rooftops and go, look, I made this thing. I worked hard on it. And like, I don't know, like it. You know what I mean? Like I've never been afraid to promote myself in that sense. And I think at its core, I really wanted to make sure that I was known as Sarah, the producer, not Sarah from Yahoo, Sarah from CBC, Sarah from a place. Yes. I just always wanted to be known as myself. And that comes from, it comes from like confidence. It comes from like years of working in this industry, but it also comes from making sure that you shamelessly self-promote yourself, because nowadays I'd say 80% of the people that get hired because, oh, we saw them on Twitter. Oh, we saw them on Instagram. Oh, we saw their podcast that they do in their spare, you know what I mean? Like that's how we find talented content producers now. Because if you're doing it for free in your spare time, that means like that you care about it. So then we're going to pay you now, give you a budget, and then hopefully you'll make some good stuff for us too. So I would just tell especially women, like, don't be afraid to like promote yourself. Also, don't pigeonhole yourself. I really early on thought my Twitter only had to be about the Leafs, especially when I was covering the Leafs. I was like, I can only tweet about the Leafs. God forbid I tweet about Taylor Swift and I'll lose followers. Like I didn't want to tweet about anything else because I thought like I had to be cool sports girl Sarah, which isn't true. I tweet about Taylor Swift. I tweet about I don't know.
The Bachelor? Because I know that was a big one.
The Bachelor. I tweeted The Bachelor. I tweet about like anything I want to that's about my daily life, but then also like sports stuff too, to show that no one is just one thing. So I think a lot of women try to like pigeonhole themselves into, oh, I have to be just like this most knowledgeable person. Like I have to know everything or else the guys are going to take me seriously. That's not true. Like you can listen to Taylor Swift and be a very good sports content producer at the exact same time. I actively am writing scripts while I'm listening to Taylor Swift. Like it's not, and you wouldn't know, it's not mutually exclusive.
No, it's so funny because like if we start our backdrop, like we have
Which
clips of artists and rappers, singers, hockey players, basketball players, because like you mentioned, you know, as people of color, like we love sports, but we like all sports. Like Faheem's a huge hockey fan, you know what I mean? And so like you're right. I think sometimes people want to put you in a box and make you think that, oh, if you're this look or this view, this age, you have to be this. But you're right. I mean, you could do and like anything, right? Because you're human first, right?
And it also brings out, it makes you a better content producer. Like if I only liked hockey, and my blinders were on for hockey and I thought about hockey all the time and I only consumed hockey content, then how am I ever going to be able to produce something better? Like, because I'm only going to be producing the same as what I'm seeing. Whereas when you allow yourself, like I gain a lot of inspiration from YouTube and like YouTube vloggers, YouTube content creators have been around for like decades doing entertainment, comedy stuff. I bring a lot of that inspiration into sports content because it's just not being done. Because previously it was just like blinders on, sports all the time. But I think you become a better, more well-rounded content producer when you bring in those other elements and allow them to help navigate your content as well.
So what's also great also is that I feel like you're kind of like ahead of the curve in regards to technology's forever changing. Like if we talk like Snapchat, if we said that 5 years ago, is like, what's that? You know what I'm saying? Like for you, where you're at, like your age right now, you're at the perfect, it's like the perfect storm where like technology's coming up like yearly of new things, and you have like your finger on the pulse what's happening. And I can just imagine at CBC Sports where they would see the value they see in someone like you who's quick, who's like what you're doing with TikTok, like you definitely have your finger on the pulse. And yeah, that's why we think we want to definitely celebrate what you're doing.
Thank you. I mean, like, honestly, I give all the credit to my fangirl Twitter days when I was 14 years old, and I would spend my days tweeting about Justin Bieber and One Direction in my bedroom. Which is true, though, which is like, sounds so silly now, but like when people ask me how I knew I wanted to work in media, that's how. I would like go to Much Music. You guys remember the live shows at Much Music?
Yes,
like
I would go to live shows.
Yeah, me too. I used to go and I would beg my mom to take me on the weekends, and I'd go stay at my friend's house and like I'd go and camp outside for 7 hours to get a glimpse of like some random celebrity I couldn't even remember anymore. And like that, but that really like, that's how I learned social media. I was using Twitter at 14 years old and I learned the voice. I learned, even back then I was being sarcastic on Twitter, which was like where people developed that Twitter voice, and that was a whole thing. And then that just, and I was consuming YouTube content. I made my first YouTube video when I was in 9th grade. I used to make music videos, and like that's like all stuff that then shaped what I'm doing now, I guess. And so I think I've just always like seen new platforms as an opportunity to do something different. And also like you never know what's going to be the next platform that blows up, right? Like I don't think anyone really thought TikTok was going to be what it is now. So you kind of just have to give it all a shot.
Nelly J, so I have one last question in regards to this. Who was gushing more, me and LaMelo Ball or Sarah in One Direction?
Ooh, actually, no, Sarah and Taylor Swift though, bro.
That's
that was a gush.
She has a new album coming out at midnight.
That was a gush, but I must give you the edge for him, because when he said LaMelo Ball's name, you kind of inhaled with some type of like exasperation.
Like, I've been waiting the whole night to talk about him.
Yeah, like Ray said, like it was a lot for you. I'm sorry, but you won by a nudge. By a nudge, yeah, by a nudge right there. But no, God, as for the culture, y'all, please check out Sarah Jenkins. Support her. I know she's on TikTok with her daily blogs. Definitely follow her on Instagram. She's definitely for the culture. She's a young leader in sports media in Canada. So please get familiar, y'all.
That's right. Get familiar. And let's close this out with That's Absurd.
That's absurd for him, bro. What was absurd this week? What was absurd?
Wow. Paul Pierce.
Oh, Lord. Paul Pierce.
Boy. So Paul Pierce, for those who haven't heard, Paul Pierce was on Instagram Live for followers, and he put it all on the line.
What?
Like literally, he I'm kind of lost for words in regards to Paul Pierce. All I can say is he, you know how when in was it the Raptors where he's like, I called game, where he that exclamation, like he called game on his career. Like he literally was an ESPN analyst and online with, let's say, some adult
strippers.
dancers.
They're called strippers. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's be real here. We're not trying to be political.
Adult
They're
dancers,
called
but-
strippers, exotic
Okay.
dancers. Pick a name. It's the same thing.
Yeah. And he was filming it himself, and apparently 2 days later, it cost him his position at ESPN. Paul Pierce, absurd, my friend.
Absurd. Sarah, so you produce shows. Now, how would you feel if one of your folks on your show decides to go on IG Live during a pandemic? People are dying every day, and someone on your show decides to go on IG Live and post himself drunk, twisted with strippers. Sarah, how would you feel?
I would have done exactly what ESPN did. See you later.
Yeah.
Pack your bags. We were just talking about like emerging platforms and content and like different ways to use it and player power, and then someone goes like, I just like first of all, like if it wasn't a mistake, like there has been players that have accidentally gone live. That's different. There's been players that accidentally went live. There's been people that didn't think they were being filmed, and it happens. That you can kind of talk your way out of it. You're still there doing it. You're still being stupid, but you can talk yourself out of it. When you are the one filming it and you're on for like a long time, like the YouTube video's up, and I went back and watched the YouTube video before this, and I was like, it's alarming how long he was on to not think, not like 15 minutes without thinking, this isn't a good idea.
Yeah.
Didn't even cross his mind. Like that just shows that they're like not responsible. It just is insane.
Yeah, it goes to show that he doesn't really have much friends, because I can't believe his friends weren't hitting him in that live saying, get off the live, get off the live.
Or taking his phone away from him. I mean, like, I guess the people that were there weren't the type of people that would want to take his phone away from him, but like, God, man, like, get it together.
Yeah.
Agreed. Like, honestly, I agree with what both you and Faheem said, Sarah. I think the fact is, who your friends at? Where your friends?
Mm-hmm.
If like, you know what I'm saying? Like your friend is doing something dumb, you should be telling him to get off within 5 minutes. Like it was it was a very long live. Like no one called Paul. Yeah. No one.
As a producer, I also like my first mindset was like, if he did this publicly, like I feel like there might have been more to also why ESPN let him go. Like my first assumption is like, if you did this publicly, like how do you act like privately then, right? You did this like on live, then like what else are we not seeing? So I always take that into consideration too, because he literally, you're right, he put it all on online, all online.
All online.
He called game, and boy, ESPN said deuces, like Chris Brown, right? Enough like deuces in the air, like real talk.
Wow.
Absurd.
Absurd.
I think I heard or something, I read somewhere that an exotic company wants Paul to have a show with players and strippers. And I'm just like, Lord, player empowerment, like can he not do this?
Well, Paul he was laughing. So he responded after he got fired on IG Live, I guess, smiling and laughing. And
he was crying inside. He was crying.
He was crying inside. You could see it, but obviously he's got to, show face.
Show face.
And what I find interesting is he's saying, better things are yet to come, pretty much, right? And I mean, if that's the case, I don't see like you had a position at ESPN, like
Disney owns them. Like, bro, better where? What is
your
better?
boss was Mickey Mouse.
Mickey Mouse is your boss, bro. Like, what? Where? Like, honey, better. But you have to come. But I get it. Like his pride. Paul. Like he's been a trash talker with the Boston Celtics.
Right.
You know how he got. He's been that trash talker, that player that always caused problems on and off court. So. Let him talk his stuff, but Paul, you can't go better than ESPN. Like, I'm sorry, you're up here in the mountain, and now you're at the bottom of the mountain.
On the way, I want to mention this. It couldn't have happened to a better guy, though. Like Paul Pierce, him as an analyst, like a lot of players, we talked about earlier, players going from the field to behind the mic and behind the cameras. Paul Pierce, he never resonated with me as someone who I felt was doing a great job as an analyst. Like I remember at one point on The Jump, he was saying that he felt Denver should try and trade Jamal Murray. And Rachel Nichols, who's the host, and I think Richard Jefferson was on there, which like kind of looked at him like, what are you talking about? And his explanation for it was just, he's out in left field. He just put it this way, not a
You're
good
happy
analyst.
he's gone. You're happy. It's okay. You're happy.
Can't say I'm mad at the decision. All right, so let's call this an episode. Let's throw it in the books. That's episode 34.
Episode 34. So Sarah, we love to give our guests a chance to do their shout outs. So the floor is yours, Sarah.
Oh, to like shout myself out?
Yourself, anything you want.
Anyone. Oh,
anyone, girl.
Anything.
Any shout out.
Well,
Taylor Swift.
Oh my goodness. Taylor Swift has a new album coming out the night that we're recording this. Shout out everyone in Ontario having to go through another stay-at-home order. Listen to this podcast as a way to get through it. Thank you. Just shout out to you guys. Thank you for having me. I had a really good time.
Oh, nice. Awesome.
Well, my shout out is Sarah Jenkins. My dear, thanks for joining us. Thank you for, talking to us, keeping it 100. All we ask for, keeping it real out here. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like you said, folks, I know the shutdown, a lot of people are upset. Kids are back home. So you parents out there with your children, I know they're kind of annoying, right? But let's just try to get through it, y'all. That's all we can do. You know what I mean? Faheem?
That's right. Keep my kid shout out simple. Sarah, once again, appreciate you coming through. It's been a blast. You're awesome. And we'll definitely be keeping an eye on what's happening with your career, amongst others, in regards to our listeners. And also I want to shout out once again, this is episode number 34, Paul Pierce's number, ironically.
Austin Matthews' number as well.
Austin, here we go.
Here we go.
And on a high note, that's what pros do. Good job. All right, so we'll throw this episode in the books, episode 34.
Awesome, y'all. So, folks, as you know, please check us out. We're on YouTube. We're on all podcast platforms. Please subscribe and share with a friend.
Tell a friend to tell a friend. That's episode 34, Good Rookies Podcast. Sarah, once again, thanks for coming out, and we out. Peace.